So, hello, welcome, CRA Academy students. This is a bonus session. This is a very special bonus session because we have uh, a student, an alumni from the CRA Academy, from our very first ever class, April 2016, Gazelle. Gazelle,
Yeah.
she has been a CRA for several years already. And so we're trying to give you all like a sneak peek possibly into your future and your possibilities in this industry. And Gazelle has become a very experienced CRA, but she's like you guys. She finished the class. She did the internship. When we were doing internship with Gazelle, we weren't as fancy with breast cancer studies and remote monitoring. We didn't have that. Gazelle just came to the clinics. Did like we basically pretend like she was a monitor at the clinics. Chris spent a lot of time with her. I spent a little bit less time. But I wanted Gazelle to come on, share her story, and then maybe answer some questions. We are recording. And then I'll leave the last 20 minutes. I'll stop recording. So the last 20 minutes will not go on YouTube. So we can ask her more personal questions and see if maybe she's going to answer them. Maybe not. We don't know. So Gazelle, thank you so much for coming on. This is like, we've had former students come on in the past, but it's always tough to get them. So it's always a very special occasion when a CRA Academy alumnus comes back and pumps up the crowd. So welcome, Gazelle.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us about your background and the CRA Academy, and then how you get started and all those kind of things.
Okay, well, I first started off as a research coordinator at a local hospital that Dan knows of. You and I used to converse a lot about trials via email. Then I found out that you had your own CRA Academy after I started working as a little firefighter to squish out fires that other sites had. Your academy really got my foot in the door into our industry as a CRA. And to this very day, I even encourage other CRCs to join your CRA Academy. My background is medical. I am an OR nurse who got her master's degree. Sometimes I think it wasn't worth it, but I think later on down the line it might help. But besides that, that's me.
So you said something very important there. You said you started as a study coordinator, and I think it's,
Yes.
even though this is CRA Academy, I think a lot of students, or I think most students, their first job will not be CRA. It's going to be something like just one level, maybe one or two levels beneath, like an in-house CRA. Lately, we've had a lot of remote site monitors straight from the CRA Academy get hired as remote site monitors. We've had trial master file, regulatory specialist, CRCs. So that's your case. That's the route you took, is CRCs. But there are multiple routes. I think people are confused about this. Can you kind of talk about that a little?
What exactly do you want to know?
Like, everyone assumes, okay, I'm gonna go straight to CRA, but there's all these other positions, like support positions, like remote site monitor. Like, what are some of the routes? Because you went the CRC route, and I think that's the best route to go to be CRA, because in my opinion, the best CRAs were former CRCs, so that they understand what the site struggles with, what the site issues are that they face, and different things like that. But now that you work for a CRO, you're privy to some of the other positions that are available. So can you kind of talk a little bit about, like, maybe for these CRA Academy grads, once they get some internship under their belt, what are some realistic positions for them?
I would think being actually a central monitoring associate also helps if you can't become a CRA. You are basically the CRA's first-hand person. If you need help, you're on site. you're on a plane, they're the person that the site's first contact will be. And then they will contact you if something is urgent.
I'm glad you brought that up. So Central Monitoring Associate. I
Correct.
guess that's every CRO has a different name for this. Some might call
Oh,
it
yeah.
like remote site monitor, right? Is that similar? I think that's similar.
Similar, yes.
Yeah, and I'm even confused. Like I've been in this industry 15 years. Always look at the job description, not the job title. The job title doesn't really mean anything. A research assistant or a research associate can have the same acronym, CRA,
Yep.
and mean completely different things. CTA, clinical trial associate, or CTA, clinical trial administrator. Don't look at acronyms, guys. Look at job descriptions, look at job functions. So you said at your CRO it's called Central Monitoring Associate?
Correct.
Okay, so CMA. See, that's a new one for me. And what do these people do?
They are basically the first line of contact that a site will have.
Okay, so they're the ones dealing on a day-to-day basis. So you mean to tell me that the sites don't deal with you so much on a day-to-day basis?
They do per se. There are more sites that need more help, but the CMA will have monthly calls. Well, my CRO that I work for, they have monthly calls with their sites to make sure everything's up to par. Depending on what the schedule is like, I will be on site if we ever have that again. Every 4 to 12 weeks, depending on what the schedule is. But they are the ones who are actually in contact every month. Every so often, I will get a direct call from the site, and then I will help them. But with my traveling schedule before COVID, I was in the air about 50-50. I was in the air half the time and on the ground half the time.
Wow. Okay, so can you tell us what it was like to get hired? You had CRC experience, but to get hired as a CRA, what was it like? How did you get in contact with the person that hired you or the group that hired you? Did you get rejected from other places? What was that process like?
I think I was fortunate enough that I knew somebody, and with your help and Chris's help, my second application, I got hired.
Oh, so only 2 applications. That's it.
Yeah, and right before Christmas, before the
And
winter break.
wow, that's a good Christmas for you. Because we're in a very hot job market right now, 2021.
Oh, yeah.
Very hot, right? Let's talk about that a little bit, but let's put this in perspective. When you got hired in 2016, right? I want to say 2016. The job market was not hot or cold. It was just normal. I think it was like a normal job market for research.
Correct.
Now, post-pandemic, we're in an era of pandemics and vaccines, and it's putting such a strain on every study, even outside of vaccine and COVID studies. Shortage of CRAs, shortage of researchers. I think you guys are all entering at the perfect time, and you're going to have enough experience under your belts to be dangerous. What do you think about this, Gazelle?
I believe that is very much true. But do not lie in your CV. They will definitely know it.
Put the truth, guys, in everyone who does the internship for us for the CRA Academy. They're required to send me one monitoring visit report, and I'm going to talk to you about IMV reports. But they are the bane of a CRA's existence, but it's also why you get hired, to document. All the stuff you're learning in the CRA Academy, it's to make sure that you understand the fundamentals so that you can create good reports, good monitoring reports. So everyone who interns, who sends me at least one monitoring report, and then we finalize it, because just like a lead CRA, I give you back the revisions, and then we'll finalize it. you send the follow-up letter. If you do just one report, and I recommend you do like 10 when you're with us, but if you do one report, I will do your CV, and on it I put clinical research associate assistant and quality control specialist for us. So Gazelle, talk a little bit about the reports, the level of detail. I think people underestimate. I know I did when I first started monitoring. I'm sure you did too, right?
Yes. I kind of wish you had me write an IMV.
See, we didn't do that back then. You were in our first class. We've evolved a lot since then.
I would have to say you have to have immaculate notes. I don't know if that's the correct word I should use, but you should have very detailed notes. You only get to go to that site once in your visit. I guess you can call and say, can you send me a copy of this, a copy of that? But you pretty much have one shot at writing your report correctly, unless your CRO lets you write addendums for mistakes that you've made.
Right.
But you're better off getting it right in the first place, the first time round.
So what was it like? Okay, you got your second application, you got hired. What did you do on your first day, your first month, your first 3 months, and then when were you ready to go monitor on your own without supervision, without adult supervision?
That was scary. I wish I still had supervision on my first visit. But the CRO that I got hired in actually had their own training. So it was like a bridge program. So I went back to school for 3 months where we were taught how to do things the way the CRO company wants us to do things. When I did my IMV, I had to actually follow someone or shadow someone for 3 visits. So being in the West Coast, I had to fly to the East Coast for maybe a 4-hour visit and then fly back home. When I did my first COV, I had to fly back out to the East Coast, but I only got to shadow one time.
So let's unpack your first IMV, okay? Because what are we? We're in week. Come on, class, help me out. I think we're in week 7, where we're gonna do site initiation visits, or maybe we're in week 8, closeout visits. Okay, we're in week 8. Says Grace. Thank you, Grace. So week 8 is miscellaneous, which is where we kind of throw everything in that doesn't fit somewhere, but is very important still. So these students, they know they've gone through all the modules basically. There's only 8 modules, right? But explain from a real world perspective, like what it's like to do your first IMV, because it's different to learn theories than to actually do it. Even we try to replicate it remotely, and I think it works. I think because students are overwhelmed, so I know it works because that's what it's like to be a CRA. But explain, Gazelle.
When I did my first IMV, we were given annotated notes how to write our report. And I made sure, even though I know I really didn't do it, I tried to make sure I followed every question that annotated note had.
Let's stop there. What's an annotated note? What's an annotated note?
It's like a guide how to write your IMV report.
Okay, gotcha.
So they'll give you hints of what to look for, what to write in your report. So with those notes, I try to make sure I found what they were asking for when I read patient files, or what was missing from patient files that was supposed to be an EDC, or what was not matching, what were possible queries that were aging, stuff like that. I just try to follow the notes. When I got my first report back, boy, that was devastating. I thought I followed it to the T. You learn from experience. You really got to be a little bit more, I don't know, have more note taking. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yes.
You got to be more detailed than what you thought.
I think that's a good rule of thumb. I tell the interns right now, where our last class is in the internship, I tell them, look, if you think it's detailed, it's not enough. And from every class, maybe 10% from their first report do it satisfactory, at a satisfactory level. The other 90% always under document. I mean, always. So was that what you were doing also? Now looking back?
Yes, I was under documenting, but
And
as
why? Why were you under documenting? You thought that it's not relevant, or you just weren't sure what level of detail to include in your report, or like give me some specifics maybe.
well, it also depends on who reads your report.
Hmm.
You've got some seasoned supervisors that want more detail than others. So
This
depending
is
on who
true.
writes your report, if you know who's going to be reading your report, I put all the details that I think they're going to need. If I know someone's lax, I still try to put everything, but if I have report after report after report after the other, then I try to cut and paste. But now, you didn't
Yep.
hear that. But
No.
um, I still try to write my reports almost the same, but just change the numbers because not every site's going to be the same.
Of course not. So, what is what is an example of like a detail that needs further explanation on an IMV report?
Uh, there will be, I don't know if it's for every CRO, but
Hmm.
there is a question that I have seen about, do you think this site is, I don't know the right word, and I can't remember what the report asked, but it's about, is the site still doing well with the study, or is PI having oversight over study? If you just say yes, well, that's a blanket statement. What if it's
Hmm.
yes to one thing but not the rest?
Mm.
You got to be more specific.
So maybe it's
Or
yes, they are still maintaining adequate oversight, but uh, they haven't been answering queries or something.
yeah, you got to be more specific.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good rule of thumb. If you think you've put enough details in your report, you probably have not. So go back. Like I said, 10% of the interns who do their first report, oh no, 90% under document. Only 10% do it satisfactory the first time. And I'm always amazed. And those are the ones who happen to get hired like that right away. Right away. And I don't think it's coincidence. I think if you go through one of these IMV reports, you understand the concepts of what it is to be a CRA. It's a lot of work. What makes it, now that you've been doing this CRA for how long? 4 years now?
Almost 4, yeah.
Wow. So that's okay. That's a great time reference point. So what have you learned as far as being a CRA? What makes it stressful? Like, what's the top three things that make it stressful?
Database lock.
Yeah.
Pandemic makes it also stressful. Um, I don't know. I'd have to say those are my top two.
Okay, database locks, and those are stressful because sense of urgency from the sponsor, and then sites are not responsive. And how important is it for the CRA to get along with this study
Well,
coordinator?
I have before you jump into that, Gazelle, I do have a question because I'm sure some
Oh,
of the
Chris is
students
here. How's it going, Chris?
doing
Hey,
well.
Chris.
Hey, Gazelle.
Came out of nowhere. Welcome.
Yeah, I've been listening.
Okay, good,
I heard you talking about me.
good,
Uh,
good, good.
anyhow, um, so I know some of the students are concerned with travel. Do you travel much?
Not during the pandemic, no.
Okay, so
I at
a lot.
home doing a lot of
Sorry, go
remote.
ahead. Oh, okay. But pre-pandemic, were you traveling much?
Yes, I was.
And was that stressful? Because I know a lot of CREs complain about that being stressful as well.
At the very beginning, it was very stressful, only because I was never sure. Depending on what airport you're at, and you've never been there before, you don't know how far one gate is from the other. It may be one number right after the other, but it could be on the other side of the airport. And you got to book it from one end to the other end. That was the
Oh yeah,
part for me.
sounds like Dallas Fort
And-
Worth.
Oh, goodness. That's one airport I always get delayed or canceled at.
Lucky you.
Ugh. Another stressful thing is when you're besides traveling is when you lose your luggage. I know they tell you not to put your luggage in the belly of the plane, but just don't have enough hands to carry everything inside the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, let's see here. So before we stop the recording and open it up to Q&A, and I hope you guys are getting your questions ready for Gazelle. I mean, a former CRA Academy, our first class CRA Academy. She is you from 4 years ago. So this is like asking your future self questions. I mean, what a concept this is. But Gazelle, for your interview, how did your interview, plural, go? Because it's not just one interview, right? It's like 3 interviews.
It was 3 interviews with 3 different people.
And how did it go?
Or 3 different groups, 3 different panels, 3 different times. It was a little nerve-wracking.
It's very nerve-wracking. I think students don't understand it. Maybe try to think of some questions they asked you, and I'm going to explain what happened when I interviewed for a contract CRA position way back 2015 or so when I took on a contract. And I didn't get the job, by the way, but not because I didn't interview well. I think it's just they found somebody better. But there was 2 people. It was an oncology study, and there were 2 directors interviewing me by phone, and they would just pepper me with questions. One guy, and there were 2 guys. One guy would say, okay, well, what do you do if you're monitoring and you notice there's been a temperature excursion? So then I answer. Before I even stop my last word, the next guy asks me something else. Like, well, what do you do if you're noticing that the site is dosing the patients with the wrong dose? How would you even know that, and what do you do? I answer that again before I even finish the sentence. The next guy asks me another question, maybe about equipment calibration. Then the other guy comes back and asks me about SAEs. They don't give you time to breathe. They don't give you time to think. And it's just back and forth for like 20, 30 minutes this way. So what was it like for you on your interview?
I think it was pretty much the same as you. It's like they were trying to see how fast you could think on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to see if you'd stumble and how you dealt with it.
And did you stumble?
I did. I believe I did.
And was that the job you got?
I started well because I got called back the second and third time.
Okay, so even if you stumble, guys, it doesn't matter. Just get up, realize what's going on. And this is why the internship is going to be so important. Doing those monitoring reports, and when they ask you questions about what challenges, did they ever ask you, like, what challenge did you have that you overcame in your last job or something like that?
Yes.
So you got to have that ready, right? You got to have that answer ready.
Or what would you do in this situation?
They love those.
I remember that question.
Situational questions. I remember those too. So, see, this is why the internship's important, guys and gals. Like, that monitoring report is stressful. How do you do? Tell me your process, Gazelle. So you show up to the site. Let's say it's a regular IMV. Do you follow a certain order? What do you do? Like, let's break down a visit, an IMV, and then we'll stop recording and we'll open it up for questions.
Well, when I first go into my IMV, after my very first one that I did where I forgot to sign the monitoring log, that's the very first thing I do. Then while I'm in the ISF, I will look and see their enrollment and their their enrollment log to make sure I'm looking at how many people I'm supposed to look at, and then I look at their delegation log.
Okay. Now let's stop. Students, who knows what an ISF is? Put it in the comments. First one wins.
Informed
And
consent.
no. This is why. This
Sorry.
is why we gotta know our stuff, guys. Investigator site file. You're right.
Yeah, sure.
Synonymous with
acronyms.
regulatory binder. Yeah, too many acronyms, but this is how they get you. This is why this is tricky stuff. Okay, ISF, synonymous with regulatory binder. So then delegation log. Why do you go in that order? I understand monitoring visit log because if you don't do that, you're going to get busy and then forget. I do the same thing. Why ISF first? I always start when I monitor source first. Why is your preference ISF first?
Well, for one, that's where my monitoring log is. And
Okay.
when I start looking at the source documents, I got to make sure that the right people who are doing the assessment are delegated to do that task.
Gotcha. Okay, so you go monitoring visit log, screening and enrollment log, which makes sense to me also. You want to know who's in the study, who's new since you left, so that you can check new ICFs. So the student almost got it right. ICF, you partial credit. And then delegation of authorities or delegation of duties log, depending on the CRO and the sponsor. And then what? What do you have like a plan, or do you just do the same thing every visit?
Depending on the visit. Normally I just follow what our monitoring plan is, which is 100% where you left off.
So you got 100%. Explain to the masses what that means. 100%.
That means I have to review and verify everything that is from where I left off to what is current.
And we also in the internship do 100% source data review, meaning we expect you to review every piece of data from every subject chart. Okay, very good. And then, so then when you start doing SDV, I imagine you start firing queries. Are you writing your report simultaneously, or are you taking notes like with a pen and paper and then doing your report later?
I write notes with the laptop.
Okay. And then do you save the investigational product accountability for last?
Actually, I don't do that because I am math. The study that I'm in, I'm math, so I don't do any of IP.
Ah, that's good. So you're masked, so that means you're blinded to the study drug. So there's another monitor that's unblinded that comes in only for investigational product.
Correct.
Very good. That does make it a lot easier. And what's your workload like right now? Like how many studies do you have and how many sites do you have?
I currently, thanks to COVID, I am in one study that has a twin sister. Same study, two different arms. I have 9 sites.
Wow. Okay. So you're pretty much working like nonstop every day.
Pretty much.
It's an honor to have you here because I mean I know you're busy. Like hopefully you don't have that. You said you actually are in the middle of a database lock now.
Yep.
And how's that going? You're good? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Is that going smooth actually this time, or you're having a rough time right now?
The pandemic did not help.
Yeah, especially when half the site doesn't show up right now and the other half sick. I'm dealing with one site now as a CRA. Everybody at the site had COVID, and I can't close out this study because nobody's finishing out the last action items, and they're like easy stuff. And I'm calling like every week, hey, come on. Well, today this person's out; they have COVID. The next time it's somebody else has COVID. Now this other person who's a backup has been exposed. They don't have COVID, but they've been exposed. Now it's this person's back. They're recovered from COVID, but now they're having family issues. So there's always like pending action item. I can understand why database locks are so stressful. Let's move away from the stress and into the optimism. What words of wisdom do you have? How do we motivate these students, these CRA Academy students who are in week 8? Let's assume they all pass. I mean, you all should pass. How do we motivate them? What do we do? The job market is red hot. How do we help?
How do we help?
What can they do? What would you do if you were them, like right now?
I would throw my CVs out to all the CROs and start running.
Clinical monitoring associate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Anything else? And guys, get your questions ready. I'm gonna hit stop on the record button. Any last words of wisdom, Gazelle?
Enjoy yourself. Don't let work bog you down.
That's actually a good one. I've seen way too many CRAs stressed out, literally in tears, on site.
I've seen that too.
Yeah, it happens all too often. But it's an important job, and I think we'll end the recording with CRA really. The responsibility of a CRA is also to keep patients safe. I think people don't talk about this enough. Yes, we expect the doctor to keep patients safe. That's their job. But they're human beings. They make mistakes. They're overworked as well, especially with COVID. The coordinators are overworked. Mistakes happen. People are not aware of mistakes that they're making that could potentially affect patient safety, like randomizing someone who shouldn't be randomized, or not lowering a dose, or not reporting an SAE. CRA is the last line of defense. CRA's job is also to keep patients safe, even though they don't have direct patient interaction. Their job is to keep patients safe. So I think we need to keep that in perspective as well. And with that being said, let's stop recording. Thank you very much, Gazelle, for your time in the middle of a database lock. You're a hero. And in the CRA, you are definitely in the CRA Academy Hall of Fame. I think Chris would agree. Unanimous decision. You're in the CRA Academy Hall of Fame. So thank you very much. And then let's leave it open for questions. I will stop recording. And students,